We have Jay from the email. Jay says, sorry, I don't know exactly why, but perhaps I'm just being a bit thick around this part. I've rewatched Phil's videos at the beginning of level 7 a couple of times now. Still don't feel like I grok the nature, purpose, or of what I'm doing with the word connection cards. So what he's referring to here is the way that we add images to our word connection cards. And that's basically the cards that are for compound words. And it's mostly, we focus on this in phase 2. You still do it in phases 3 through 5, but the idea in phase 2 is to get good at picking good images to represent vocabulary words. Now, I'll get into a little bit more about that in a second. Continue with his email. I've done some where I found a picture that sounds kind of like the word, and I found things like Phil's example of his first phone. But a lot don't really make sense when I get to review them. So this is an interesting thing. He says, I've done some where I found a picture that sounds kind of like the word. And I think that maybe he had a misconception about the idea that it's supposed to be related to the sound specifically. It's supposed to be related to the meaning. Now, it could be a link to the meaning, but it's supposed to be related to the meaning, not necessarily the sound. Next, he says, maybe I'm conflating too much with the really clear and obvious hard link mnemonics of the HMM characters, and these are supposed to be something different. Maybe I can phrase the question this way. The card comes up in Anki, I see the picture, and what? What is expected to occur in my brain at that point? Still loving the course, Jay. So the brain occurrence, what is expected to occur in your brain is that you see the image and then you produce the Chinese word. It is actually quite simple. But the reason that this particular occurrence happens in the first place is because, well, it's images are way easier to remember than words on the page. So if you imagine that there's a word and that word is that word is just the text on the page, and then you're supposed to produce the Chinese translation, that is scientifically shown to not be as effective as seeing an image on the front of the card and producing the Chinese word. Our ability to remember images is far deeper into our evolution than the ability to remember text on a page. So even though it might seem simple, if you have a picture of an apple on the front as opposed to the word apple, the memory is going to be significantly different. Now, the technique that's important to try to figure out with the word connection cards is actually not so much picking an object to represent a noun. Because if the word you're learning is apple, then just find a picture of an apple that you think looks good. That's easy enough. But if it's something abstract, like say reside or live, as Chad came up with before, well, he could imagine something that he associates with residing somewhere. And it could be a picture from his, say, first college dorm where he lived for the first time outside of his parents' house. Or you could think of what is a residential zoning section of a map or something like that. There's different things you could imagine for a more abstract meaning, but that can sometimes have to be a link. So it's not something immediately obvious like an apple is to the word that means apple, 苹果. But like, as long as the link is clear to you and you see the image on the front and it causes you to produce the word, it's good enough. And that is more like how a Chinese person learns or a kid learns when they're a kid, because a kid learns when they're a kid. But you know what I'm saying? Like that's more like how they learn. It's a direct image to the Chinese word, and there's no going over to the English translation, which is a bit of a tangent. There's no need to do that. You can just go directly from the image to the Chinese word, and that's more efficient overall for two reasons. One, it takes out the step of going through the translation, and two, we know that images are easier to remember than text on a page already. So with those two things in mind, that's why we do it. And so even though sometimes it might seem like this is simple, I'm just putting a picture on the front, it's a picture that connects to you personally, and it causes you to do your reviews in a more scientifically effective way.